So, good day everyone. So, my name is Michael Del Ubo and today I'm going to talk about a software review and selection process. So now let's proceed to the introduction. So here in early 1980s, relatively inexpensive microcomputers came on the market. So in early days, computers were expensive and rare. Because of this, people didn't buy or didn't choose software carefully. And also, school only had one basic program for typing, which is why teachers use it even if it wasn't ideal because there were no alternatives. And also, computer at the time is very limited. Yes, educational software is very limited before. So that's why teacher often had to create their own IMs or materials or use whatever software was available even if it wasn't perfect. Kahit hindi ito compatible sa kanyang lesson, ginagamit pa din yung software na yun. So, and also, almost 15 years later, microcomputer in school are no longer a novelty, but contributed significantly to learning process. So, after 15 years later, no, the computer has significant impact on educational. Well, they don't just use the computers, but they also use it a combination of computers and learning in that process. So now let's proceed to what is software. So a software is something which simplifies tasks and makes it easier to run school and higher education institution. But too often it is a source of frustration and expenses. So in other words, software is a tools that make tasks easier, can also help complete work faster, and if we choose it purely, therefore it can cause us some frustration and can waste some money. So let's give you an example no about a good software. So a good software, it is a learning apps that guide student step by step. Bad software naman is it is a confusing apps that student don't understand the concept of the software. So now let's proceed. Difference between software and application. So as you can see here in the left side we have the software and the right side we have the application. So software set of instruction or data that operates the hardware. All encompasses term of computer data, executable or may not be, not often operating system based, does not need user interaction for functioning, as mediator between user and hardware, are not application. So in other words, software is a collection of instruction, process, or data. It, it may run in the background, connects the user to the hardware. So for example, no, yung software, it is a system which is on a Windows. Yes, it is a Windows, which means it controls our computers. So here naman sa application side, it is a package to perform specific tasks. Types of software that does not certain tasks, always executable, operation system based, need user interaction for functioning, used only by end user, all are software. So in other words, here in the application is considered as software too because without software we don't have application. And also application have have their own certain tasks. So for example, no, example of application is Facebook. So in Facebook, the task there is for us to communicate and interact with others. So that is the application. So now let's proceed. 7 step to responsible software selection. So here we're going to talk about the step-by-step method to choose the right software instead of guessing. We need to analyze the needs. So our responsible teachers should first determine whenever the computer is appropriate medium to use to satisfy instructional goals and objective. There's always the possibility that a careful need analysis will result in a dedication to use some other teaching learning strategy. So in other words, we the teacher or I the future teacher must first identify my learning goals. And after that I will analyze what student really need. So in order for us to analyze, first we need to understand the problem before we are going to choose the solution. So for example, no, if a student is weak in reading, therefore we are going to choose a reading focus software, not those math software. An objective should be clear and specific and also measurable. So for an instance, no, instead of saying student will understand science, we are going to use student will explain water cycle using correct steps. So by doing that, the student will not only understand science, but he is also going to understand the cycle of water or the correct step of doing that. Objectives identify specifically what behavior we would like the student to demonstrate. So here the teachers should brainstorm alternative learning methods for achieving that objective. So objective must clearly show what students should demonstrate or perform. So instead of saying learning coding, we are going to use student will create a simple program using loops. So in other words, the student will not only learn coding, but he is also gonna learn the programming. And also it stated here that learning methods, it says that teachers should think of a different way to achieve learning goals such as direct teaching, self-study, or videos, or even computer-assisted learning. So for example, no, if a student learn better visually, therefore we are going to use a video-based software. So now let's proceed to step 2, specify requirements. After identifying all those needs, now we are going to define what the software must have. So this includes something like compatibility with availability hardware. So it talks about the availability of the devices. There are also the cost, which is if the budget is on the limit of our money or the site license be necessary. It talks about if those website is licensed. And here we have also the user friendliness. It talks about if this website is friendly for the users. And next we have the adequacy of documentation. It talks about the information and also access to technical support via toll-free number, and of course here it talks about if this software has technical support for the user. And lastly, we have the direct correlational with the instructional objectives and curricular requirements identified in the needs analysis.
So I'm the next reporter. So my name is Bianca Serpendo. So next is the step 3, identify promising software. So there are many ways to identify promising software, and the responsible selector should use as many of them as possible. So we have catalogs, magazine and journals. So the educational product information, or EP, produces the educational software selector, or the test, a database containing description and reviews of thousands of currently published educational software programs. So next is the step 4. So read relevant reviews. So dito naman is the after a list of promising software has been identified, the teacher or materials selection committee may be able to narrow or extend the list by reading relevant software reviews. So next is the step 5. So the step 5 is review software. So the most effective way to judge whether software is appropriate or not is to observe students as they interact with the program. Are the educational objectives achieved when the student uses the program? So next is the step 6. Make recommendation. So dito naman, after potential software has been preview, it is the time to make recommendation or purchase. The responsible software selection should be able to select the most desirable software after a systematic evaluation of all alternatives in terms of education objectives and constraints. So next is the establish a quantitative method for rating each alternative against the selection criteria established in step 2. So next is the evaluate the relative importance of each selection criterion, or the review should be probably be rated relatively high in importance. So and create a written record outlining the reason why a piece of software is recommended or not recommended for purchase. So next is the step 7, get post use feedback. So determine the conformance or the discrepancy between all the enabling objectives specified in step 1 and the student performance obtained using the chosen computer software. So, 7 tips for giving negative feedback. Like for example, do you want to have your feelings hurt a little bit because you have some negative feedback, or do you want to continue down the track and have a huge disaster? So, yun lang.